Welcome to the podcast about venture capital, where investors and founders alike can learn how VCs make decisions and reach conviction. Your host is Nick Moran, and this is The Full Ratchet.
Welcome back to TFR for a special installment of Investor Stories. In this segment, the investors tell a story about some of the most odd and unusual situations they've ever encountered as investors. This is the segment called The Strange and Unusual. On this special segment, we have Seth Levine of Founder Group. Seth, what is the strangest, most unusual, or most memorable startup pitch you've received?
This one is easy. So this was a number of years ago, but I was still at Mobius at the time. There was a business plan that got sent to me, essentially was a group of people that wanted to colonize the moon because the atmospheric pressure on the moon, of course, is so much lower than it is on Earth. They were going to mine for materials, create a satellite manufacturing facility on the moon so they could launch satellites from the moon directly. And they wanted to raise $1 trillion to achieve that. It's very memorable. I still talk about it here, probably 18, 19 years later.
Might take quite a few venture firms to come up with that amount.
Yeah, just a couple. And I don't think mining for raw materials on the moon was going to work. So
I'm guessing it was a pass, Seth.
It was a pass, yeah. That one I didn't regret passing.
On today's special segment, we have Ben Wiener of JumpSpeed. Ben, what is the strangest, most unusual, or most memorable startup pitch you've received?
How about the one where I invested in the founder, even though the first time I met him, he was high on drugs?
That's pretty good.
Yeah. So without disclosing identities, I was on I do a lot of volunteering in the local community. So I was on the admissions panel for a local accelerator. And that meant that on the day where they were evaluating like all the 40 or 50 startups that were trying to get in, I was one of a bunch of people at tables where the founding teams would sort of drop in, bell would ring and they sit down for 5 minutes. They give you like the quick fire hose speech and then they move on. Bell rings and then the next group drops in and you kind of score them on a scorecard. So I'm sitting there and this group, bell rings, these two guys sit down and one of them is really spaced out, like really high. Fist pumps me. Hey, what's up? And the other one is trying to keep a straight face and like trying to calm him down. And he's just uncontrollable, like totally out of it and weird. So of course I scored them pretty low and I forgot about them. I got a phone call from the head of the accelerator a couple months later saying, you got to meet with these two guys. They're amazing. They're one of the best startups in our program. And when they walked into my office, I recognized them as these two founders.
Wow.
And the one who had been really weird looked totally fine. And when we sat down, they said, you might remember us. Joe, I'm changing the names, but Joe here, when you first met us, was acting a little weird because he was high. I said, yeah, I kind of remember that. They said, let us tell you a story. Joe is actually a really wonderful guy. I've since gotten to know them. They're just amazing people. He had been in a serious car accident the day before the pitch session at this accelerator. And the other founder, he was hospitalized. The other founder called him and said, I can't go alone. Like, you can't send me in there alone. Like, it's our company. You need to help me with the pitch. It's like, dude, I'm in the hospital. So that the morning of the screening, he signed himself out of the hospital completely drugged up on morphine because he had severely injured his back in the car accident. Took a taxi from the hospital directly to the accelerator screening program and was still floating on morphine when he walked in the room. Wow. And the other founder hadn't seen him since the accident. So anyway, by the time they got to me the next time, 6 months later, he was totally fine. And they've since become one of my favorite, teams in the portfolio. Married and kids and like wonderful, professional, incredibly talented people. But again, never judge the book by that first cover. You have no idea what's actually going on.
That's a good one. I've never heard that before. Amazing.
You never heard that one. Yep.
On today's special segment, we have Rob Go of Next View Ventures. Rob, what's the strangest, most unusual, or most memorable startup pitch you've received?
This is way back in the day. I got a startup pitch by a company that was doing DNA testing to test dating compatibility. And I can't even remember what the markers were, but they literally were going to have you like spit into a tube or lick something. And then it was going to like do all this analysis and then only match you with people who had like compatible markers, Which to me, I was like, that's actually not a bad idea if it actually works, but it was like too much voodoo magic for me. But I always remember that pitch because I was like, yeah, that'd be actually pretty cool if it worked.
Do you know what happened to him?
No, I don't think they ever raised.
Oh, interesting.
Or if they did, it didn't get to any meaningful scale. But I always remember that one for some reason. I have another one actually I'll share that which is one that we did invest in. And this actually goes back, I guess, to one of your earlier questions about lessons learned. I heard the pitch from a company called what is now called 2U from a guy named John Katzman. And John was the founder of Princeton Review. 2U is a business that was basically taking legit accredited like degree programs from good schools and turning them into digital programs. And this is many years ago. And I remember I met with him. His pitch was so simple. He said, bar none, online education sucks. We're just going to make it fucking great. And I was like, is that it? I was like, yeah. He's like, that's pretty much what we're doing. And you know what I appreciated was like, sometimes the bet is just that, right? You're taking something that's bad and you're making it really good. I think as a VC, you're trying to figure out like, what's the bet that I'm making here? And like, am I willing to make it? And sometimes you can overthink it with all these other factors and you're trying to convince, but like, if that's the bet, then like, that's what you focus on. Like convince me that that's possible. And I kind of like the clarity of thought there. There's another company called Love Pop. Remember they came around? No. They make these like pop-up like greeting cards. I think some venture investors did invest in them. They're a pretty fine company. But I remember hearing a pitch from them, like when they were in business school, and they were doing this whole pitch about like how this is like a way to get into gifting, and there's going to be this whole digital component of the business. And I was like, I think you just make really, 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 really great greeting cards. Like, isn't that enough? And I think that's pretty much what they do. And they're going to be a really successful company. And sometimes you just don't need to be too clever. Just do something great, and that might be enough.
That will conclude this installment of Investor Stories. If you're enjoying the program and would like to see it continue, take a moment and leave a 5-star review in iTunes. Okay, that will wrap things up for today. Until next time, over-prepare, choose carefully, and invest confidently. Thanks for joining me.